Hello there, fellow truth seekers. This is Doug coming to you again. Of course, this is not Shabbat. I told you last week that I'd see you again on Shabbat if Yahuwah was willing. But I guess Satan decided he was going to try to interfere with that. And of course, if we're going to walk and follow after Christ, then we're going to be come at, and Satan's going to try to do whatever he can to interfere with us. Of course, YouTube took my video from last week down and gave me a strike. Medical misinformation. Of course, the only misinformation is the people that propagate the narrative that YouTube and all these other channels. Now, of course, what I did is I took the video from last week. I always back them up, and I took and uploaded it to my channel on Rumble. On there, it's Dr. Doug 62 is my channel. If you want to go over there and watch that video from last week, because they're gonna pick you apart, and they're gonna always be looking for something else to take you down for. It's only gonna get worse. But at least for the time being, we got Rumble where we can brighten it up a little bit here, where I can upload to and it not get pulled down, at least up to this point. Now, I'm sure eventually it's going to be the same way on there. But one of the things I wanted to talk about this week, and I'm not really going to go and do a Bible study, but there's some things that I try to keep abreast of a lot of this stuff because I want to pass the information on to people so that they understand the battle that we are in. Yes, it is a spiritual battle. We war against powers and principalities and the powers and darkness in high places. But now we're also going to be attacked by our own people, our own I guess some of them are human. Some of them I don't think they're all humans. I think they're hybrids, a lot of them. They've been slowly being placed in the positions of power over a period of time. I've talked about that. I talked about it last week. Talking about technology. And one of the things that, technologies that, again, people have a tendency to want to discount it, discredit it, and not believe it. That there's technologies that can do a lot of this stuff. But what you have to understand, and I've talked about this too, the reason the Messiah said, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be at the return of the Son of Man, is not just because, they were, violent and they were killing one another and the thoughts of their imaginations were toward evil continuously. Yeah, all that's true, and it's getting that way today. But there's more to the story than just that. And of course, to get a lot of that, of course, you can look at Genesis chapter 6, and also Genesis chapter 3, the seed war, but most people don't pick up on that. That in Genesis chapter 3, verse 15, the Father declares war against the serpent. And he puts enmity between the woman and her seed and the serpent and his seed. Okay? Then that means that the serpent has seed too. not just the woman Eve, but the serpent. The fallen ones, they too are producing seed. And they've been doing it over a long period of time. And, initially they were giants and they were hideous. A lot of them. They were, they were not, they were, for all intents and purposes, just about monsters. And they, had a lot of, double rows of teeth, 6 fingers and 6 toes, and probably other kinds of abnormalities. But as time has gone on, they have been slowly making better and better models. To that I believe now that you can't tell one of them from a regular human being. And that's the idea, is to produce it, because, I look at, I may be wrong, man, I'm human, I can be wrong. But I see a lot of these political leaders and a lot of these people that are over these departments and over these agencies and stuff. And I'm going to tell you, a lot of them are some strange looking people. And I think back about some of some of these carvings and these depictions of a lot of these entities and stuff, these Nephilim hybrids or whatever, and how strange they looked. And I declare, a lot of these people, they look like that. Their eyes bulging and thin, skinny necks, big heads, or just strange looking people. And that could be just, genetic diversity, I guess, but some of them I really believe they are more than what they appear to be. And then some that I believe are being controlled. Like Joe Biden. This guy, man, he's got so bad that they had to cut him off. His handlers, just had to cut him off because, and it's probably because they have the technology, and this is what I wanted to talk about. They have the technology to put thoughts in your head, to attack your mind. They have the technology to implant nanobots, that they can just park there. Some of them are designed to go to your heart. Some of them are designed to go into your brain and just park there. And at any time, all they got to do, using these microwaves, these 5G towers, these death towers, they can send a signal out and trigger these things on, and they can go in there and cause a blood vessel in your head to bust, cause an aneurysm, or cause something else. But also, people like Joe Biden, they can be using this thing to control your mind, and over time, people probably try to resist it, and it causes your brain to begin to break down. And ultimately you end up, like you got dementia or Alzheimer's or something else, Parkinson's or whatever, because the stress on your brain from them trying to control your thoughts and control what you're saying, and your own will is trying to overcome it, but it can't. Because, and the thing is that, just as an example, and you can go look this stuff up. It's, don't be lazy. Don't be a lazy Christian, a lazy believer. and sit back and expect somebody else to do all the research and all the homework, and you just sit back and take it in, but then you don't apply it, or you don't want to accept it or believe it. Coming from Germany after World War II, there was over 1,600 scientists that came over here from Germany. It was called Operation Paperclip. And these scientists were from a diverse range of disciplines, like Wernher von Braun, was a rocket scientist. And all of these people that were, Nazis, they were occultists. They were in the occult heavy. And the Vril. And of course, the Vril is what the Hindu people call prana, and or the Akashic record, or as Tesla called it, the aether. The medium that's in the second heaven that's spinning around up there, that is like a liquid and a gas. It's the fifth state of matter. Ultra low temperature, absolute zero pretty much. And so Tesla believed that everything, it's like a database that all knowledge is stored in this Akashic record. Not just him, people like Robert Oppenheimer. He carried around the book of the Vedas. He was a big into the Eastern mysticism and stuff and all that, and the Vedic text, because they describe nuclear bombs going off. Like 1,000 suns and it melting everything and burning everything up, and because these things have been used. That's what hit Sodom and Gomorrah. Fire and brimstone. Well, it's a nuclear device. Okay, and and they found it. They found Sodom and Gomorrah. And they found vitrified glass, and they found glazed pottery that they believed should, they at first they thought, well, this glazed pottery, this is from way later, later period, so this can't be Sodom and Gomorrah. But they sent that pottery off and had it analyzed, and they come to find out that glazing was not glazing. It was where the surface of that pottery had been vitrified. They call it Trinitite, named after the Trinity test site out there in Nevada where they tested the first nuclear device. And when they did, it turned the sand into vitrified glass. And it takes an incredible temperature to do that. It takes like 4,000 degrees to vitrify sand. And so there where they found Sodom and Gomorrah, it was 15 feet down in the dirt, in the soil layers. That's how, over thousands of years, and that would probably have been, during the time of Abraham, 3,000 years ago. Let's see, almost 4,000 years ago. Maybe even longer, maybe even closer to 5,000 years. And so, that site had been buried over that time, and they found this vitrified pottery, and they realized that it wasn't like the glazing, because at that time they didn't glaze pottery. It was just clay pottery, and it didn't have a glazing on it. That was 1,000 years later when they began to do that. So, but this glazing on this pottery was not the same as that later pottery. And, it was because the clay had sand in it. And whenever these temperatures caused it to turn like a glass on the surface of it. And so they were able to identify. And then not only that, but in these Vimanas, these Vimanas, uh, these craft called Vimanas in these Vedas, these Vedic texts, there's a section in there on Vimanas, these flying machines. Well, the Nazis and all them, they were trying to figure all this stuff out. And they were communicating to the Vril, or to the Aether, or the Akashic record, or whatever you want. Well, they were communicating with these entities, these demonic entities, and they were giving them this knowledge, just like they were doing back there before the flood. Except back then, these fallen ones, these Semshaza and Azazel and all these other 200 watchers that came down here, they were teaching them forbidden knowledge. But Elohim did not forbid them from doing it, because man rejected him and chose to get that knowledge. The knowledge of good and evil, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So now they have this ability to know the difference. And so he says, okay, I'm going to allow you, to start getting this, and you're going to see what the results and the consequences of it is. Well, the ultimate, result of the consequences was the flood. Because these entities, once they kind of got in control, and like Poseidon and all them, he was supposedly the one who, he had 10 sons, and they founded the kingdom of Atlantis, which they believe they found where Atlantis was. It's over there in North Africa. And, they can see these rings, because they said it was like, Atlantis, the capital part was in the center, and it had like water, and then another ring, and, with buildings and all on it, and then water, and then an outer ring with buildings and all on it. And they believe that they've discovered it. But it was antediluvian, pre-flood. The reason that Homer or Plato knew about this is because it was just passed down. Because, when Noah came through the flood, I'm sure not only did he just tell them orally about these things, but I believe there was books that he brought through that was passed down. And just like they were passed down to him, Enoch was the scribe, and he wrote all these books. He wrote hundreds of books, and he passed them down to his son Methuselah, and then Methuselah passed them down to Lamech, and from Lamech down to Noah. And then Noah, when he came through, he warned people, he warned his children, he warned those first generations of people born after the flood. This is what happened. This is what happened before the flood. This is why the flood came. Because there was all these abominations, all these giants, all these chimeras, and human beings had been corrupted. They had been genetically corrupted. And so these things that they have in these Vedas about these weapons, about these craft and all that stuff, that's stuff that was going on before the flood. And probably even after that. They was probably still, showing up down here and doing this stuff. And so now we come to today, and Christ, he's telling us there in Matthew 24, it's going to be just like it was back then. Yeah, people are going to be violent, and people are beginning to be, thinking evil continuously. And and every imagination is toward evil, and they don't want to receive the truth. They don't want to know the truth. They don't want to hear the truth. And hold on there just a minute, folks. I got this. My phone keeps saying that the battery's getting low, and I hooked the cord up to it, but it don't seem to be. It keeps popping up, so I don't know if it's charging or not. Never seen nothing like these cords. You can just buy dozens of these things and use, and they don't hold up worth a hoot. And these are kind of expensive cords. Usually it'll make a ping sound whenever it's charging. Hold on, folks. I'll be right. All right, folks. I think I got one that'll charge now. It can be aggravating trying to keep a decent cord. I mean, they just don't hold up. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that don't think that this technology and stuff does not exist, because it does. And these followings are doing the same thing again. They're giving, and if you read Enoch, he says that them watchers were punished. They were put into the abuso for 70 generations. Anyway, it comes out to like 4,000 years, 4,000 and some years. And about the time that the Industrial Revolution took off is about the time when they should have been released. I mean, they're reserved for judgment. They're gonna go before judgment and all, just like humans will. But they were put in there for this period of time, and that was part of their punishment for what they did. But that they would be released. Well, if they were released somewhere around the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, because it's funny, when you look at man's progression of knowledge, going all the way back to, the time that Noah came through the flood and the world began to repopulate, man's knowledge really did not increase. I mean, we rode horses and buggies and beasts of burden up until the 20th century. I mean, we were still, using horses and buggies. And then all of a sudden you have this spike. I mean, just, and Daniel tells us that, says, I think it's in Daniel 2, that knowledge shall increase, they shall be going to and fro upon the earth, and knowledge shall increase. Well, I mean, up until that point in time, most people never left the place where they was born at. I mean, they never went anywhere. They was born there and they died there. 95% of the people, maybe 5% were adventurous types that decided, I'm going to go see what's on the other side of the hill, or I'm going over here to this other city I've heard about, I mean, over in Athens, I live over in Constantinople and I want to go see Athens, or I want to go over to, Alexandria or somewhere. Well, they'd go, and get put a caravan together, and they'd start marching and head off over there, and get on boats or whatever when they got to the ocean or the sea, or, and then, sail over to this place, with their entourage and all. But those were your adventurers, I mean, the people that wanted to see what was on the other side of the hill. But most people were afraid to go anywhere, because they was wild animals, they was marauders, they were thugs, and highwaymen and all that kind of stuff. So you were taking your life into your own hands if you ventured very far away from where you lived in a city or something. And even then, it was still dangerous. It wasn't like, but it was more safe being in a city with other people than it was being a lone wolf, going off the beaten path. And even these adventurers and stuff, they didn't go by themselves. They would usually have a caravan or something. But so you had up until the 20th century, people lived pretty much where they were born at, and they were still using beasts of burden. But then you have this just almost out of nowhere, this spike in knowledge, and to the point where the total amount of data that is generated, knowledge, is doubling. I think they say that the total amount of data being generated is doubling every 12 hours. Now, it's not the sum total of knowledge that's doubling, but the amount of knowledge, it took 2,500 years for man's knowledge, I'm talking about after the flood, 2,500 years for man's knowledge to double. And then it took like another 1,000 years for it to double again. And it's been slowly going down as time's going on. But this amount of doubling of knowledge was really rudimentary. It's only been in the last 100 years or so that it's really, went exponential. And to where now the amount of data that is gathered is doubling every 12 hours. That's incredible. And knowledge is vastly increased, and technology has. And the thing is, I talked about this in my last video, that there's two different types of physics. There's Einsteinian physics, and then there's the Tesla physics, which is the earlier physics, the Michelson-Morley, and the early, Newtonian, and even a lot of Newton's stuff is not correct, because he's basing it off of heliocentric cosmology, and of course, as long as you buy into that, it's not going to be correct, because they believe that there's gravity and all that, and there is no such thing as gravity. People argue with you, oh, there is, man, what do you think's holding you down? Well, it ain't gravity just holding us down. I explained that in my last video. So, like I said, if you want to know, I got struck down, video pulled down. You can go over to Rumble, JR or DR DOUG 62 is my channel. You can go over there and look at it. And I go into a lot of this stuff, and this is sort of it was a sort of a segue to what I'm talking about now, which is the manipulation of your mind through technology. These entities giving man the ability, or giving them the pointers. You see, I don't think they always just come right out and just tell you everything. No, I think what they do is they steer people in the right direction. Because you're already going to have humans that are curious, that want to know about stuff. So they're going to be experimenting, but they may be going down the wrong path that leads to this understanding, or that leads to this knowledge, or to this device or whatever. So what they'll do is they'll nudge you over down this other path over here. You know, they'll put the thought in your head, well, what if I go down this way? Maybe I'm going the wrong way. Maybe I need to go over this way. And you go over this way and you discover something that you didn't, sort of like an aha moment. And so they, that's what they kind of do is they kind of steer you towards the direction of discovery. And so if Satan, who is not omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent, wants to be those things, or wants to try to be, wants to try to mimic the abilities of our Creator, then what he's going to do is he's going to, he's going to lead people down the paths that's going to lead to the technologies. And of course, it has to be incremental because there's a learning curve. I mean, it's just like, okay, with electronics, for example, the base, when they started out back, with the Tesla stuff, and Marconi and all, which actually Tesla was the first one to transmit radio waves, not Marconi. They tried to just destroy Tesla because he was bringing out the truth about the way things really are, and they were trying to cover it up because they don't, the secret societies and the elite, they want to control knowledge. They want to control the secret knowledge, and so that they can have advantage. And so that they can use it to control people. That's their agenda. And that's because they're being driven by these entities, these, Satan and the demonic. So they want to propagate and promulgate their will over everybody else using this technology. And so, but you got to develop these technologies to the next level, and of course that takes time. So, Tesla, I mean, he was way ahead. He was way ahead of everybody else in his understanding of what the true nature of everything really is, that it's electromagnetism. And so they wanted to misdirect people, and that's why they come out with people like Einstein. That's why they come out, and said it was Marconi that did invent radio, and really it wasn't. It was Tesla. And I mean, he invented so many things that were way ahead of their time. And so he comes out with these technologies, and I mean, he understood standing waves and scalar waves and, Schumann resonance and all this stuff, but they want to keep this stuff hidden. And so they get people like Einstein to come out and try and disprove people like Michelson Morley, who they done experiments and they done them over and over and over again, and they never could detect any movement of the Earth. Earth is fixed and unmoving. It's the celestial objects that are moving, the sun, the moon, and the stars. And so they wanted to try to disprove this. And so, but see, the Nazis, get back to the Nazis, they understood that, what Tesla did. They understood that it was electric, and that, that things did not operate according to, what they've been telling us, what the Einstein and even Newtonian physics and stuff. They were not based on the reality. The flat Earth, the aether, and the electric universe, basically. So they got to cover that up and bring out something else to misdirect people, Yeah, you can figure out some stuff with this over here, basics, the basic stuff. But the real technology, the real knowledge, you're not going to get it. You're not going to get it from that. And they're going to tell you, oh, look over here. Don't look over here. But you see, there's people that, there's always going to be somebody they ain't going to buy into it. That they're going to say, well, what you're saying doesn't match up with what I'm observing. With my own eyes, what I'm seeing doesn't follow with that. It doesn't go along with that. And I've done experiment after experiment, and it just doesn't jive. So then they begin to look over here where they don't want you to look. People like Walt Thornhill with the Thunderbolts project, and they don't buy into they don't buy into the narrative of the mainstream science anymore about the cosmology and stuff. I still think they think it's a globe and all that, but they just don't buy into the galaxies and the worlds and all that stuff being what, and stars and all that being what we've been told. And they actually they kind of follow after Velikovsky. He wrote a book called Worlds in Collision, and it was totally contrary to the mainstream narrative, and of course they come after him too. I mean, anytime anybody comes out with something that is leading people toward where the truth is, they're gonna they're gonna try to discredit them. They're gonna, in the media, they're gonna call them every kind of charlatan, and ultimately, if they start getting too too close to the real truth, they'll eliminate them. I mean, and that's the thing with this technology that they have now, and a lot of this stuff, these scientists that come out of the Nazis, that came over here in Operation Paperclip, they came over here, and our government put them in the top labs everywhere, give them big budgets, and told them to work on these. You work on this project to misdirect. You work on this project for us. You see what I'm saying? They would have a project that they pumped this money into that really, like the Apollo space program, and Gemini and Mercury, they pumping all this money in there. But all that money ain't going to this. I mean, if you ever look at the footage of like the lunar module, that thing was like like a garbage can or something, with just a few things put on it or something. I mean, it was junk. And it was all a prop. Well, it didn't cost them nowhere near the money that they pumped into that to do that. And Wernher von Braun, he was building these big rockets, but they were, the use that they had in mind for them had nothing to do with going to the moon or anywhere else. That was all misdirection. That was to make you look over here and ooh and ah and all that, and make people go along with putting all this money in it, but when really all that money was being redirected over here to other technologies. And because the Germans have been working on all kinds of stuff, they hadn't really perfected or brought to fruition, but they were still working on it, and they wasn't far from having the bomb either. Just a month or so behind us. I mean, and so, and they had been working on the Glocka, a flying saucer that worked off of anti-gravity, which is not anti-gravity, it's just magnetic repulsion. But anyway, they were working on all this stuff. And in fact, after the war, that thing went missing. I mean, they ain't never found any trace of that or any of the labs. They dismantled them, and according to some people, they had put them on these huge submarines that they had that were big as anything we've got now. and they were transport subs that, you know, could haul huge amounts of cargo, and they hauled them down to Argentina and down to Antarctica, you know, to the Arctic, Antarctica, and they had a base down there, and they still do. And so, you know, they come over here, and that's when you had, you know, after that you had Operation High Jump, where Admiral Byrd went down there, and they found the Aether. But they also run into the Nazis down there, and, you know, supposedly some of our ships got sunk because they were flying these Glockas or whatever, these saucers. But you know, they were the early, and they've probably been building them to the specifications for these entities. You know, the entities have been working with them, giving them the plans. You build this for us. We'll let you have, you know, technology too. We'll let you have some of them. And then they let us find them. You know, our government, whenever they crash or whatever, you know, they deliberately crash them and let us get a hold of them and reverse engineer them and stuff like that, by design. And it was so that they could progress the technology to the point where they could do the things they're doing now, like with AI, with genetics, you know, because you have, in order to do these things, you got to have the tools. You got to have the test equipment. You got to have the know-how. You've got to have the experience in making semiconductors. You know, we went from cat whisker diodes, radios, to, you know, vacuum tubes, and then from vacuum tubes to the first transistors, and from the first transistors to the first chips, and from the first chips to the first processors, and from the first processors, you know, we're up to now where these processors that have billions and billions of transistors on them. You know, and the first ones, you know, the first processor, I think, was an Intel 4004 or something like that, a 4-bit processor that had, you know, 60,000 transistors in it, you know, or gates. I mean, now you got billions and billions of these transistors or gates, logic gates, in a CPU. And so, you know, there's this progression, this progression of, and not only, you know, do you have to have the knowledge and the wherewithal to build these things, but you have to have the tools to test them and to analyze them and to debug them. So, you know, you go, you know, they kind of go hand in hand. But as you develop these things and you get further and further along, they get more and more advanced, and you learn things along the way about physics, the true physics, that takes you even further. And so now you get into where, you know, the quantum physics, where, you know, you got quantum computing, you got the AI, and then you have all of this, you know, fast Fourier transform analyzers, and, you know, these tools that allows them, and see, with the AI, the thing about that is that with the AI, you can use the AI to develop an even more powerful AI. You see, and that's, you know, and that's where they're at now, is that these AI are able to learn. And so since they're able to learn, they can also, you know, develop themselves even into a more advanced version. Just like they, up until recently, you would use a computer, you would develop a new, most powerful computer, supercomputer, or, you know, scalar technology, you know, where you can put thousands of processors together to work on a problem simultaneously, different parts of a problem. You know, maybe this problem on an old supercomputer would take you 10 years to solve it, running 24 hours a day with 4 processors. Now you got 1,000 processors running 24 hours a day, and it can break that problem up into bits, you know, pieces, and solve it in 2 hours. You know, what just a year ago took 10 years to solve this problem, unless you took a bunch of these computers and tied them together. And that's basically what they're doing, is they have these superscalar technologies where they can put thousands upon thousands upon thousands of processors together and give it a problem, and it can break that problem up into thousands of little pieces and work, you know, each one working on that problem at the same time, and they can come up with a solution that would have took thousands of years, can take a year. And so they would use that latest generation of computer to design the next generation of computer. And this is how the technology's progressed, and now it's just progressing so rapidly that even these people that develop this stuff and all, they don't have no understanding of what these things are capable of and how dangerous they are. Not that it's going to become sentient, but that it can be taken control of by these entities and used to control humanity. You know, to give Satan the appearance of having omniscience, omnipresence. Because he'll be able to tap into this AI system, this global, or not global, but worldwide AI, and it'll be able, excuse me folks, didn't get enough sleep last night, but they can, you know, use this technology to monitor and keep track, and they already pretty much are. I mean, you know, each country is kind of pretty much doing it, but these powers that be, you know, they don't play by the same rules as everybody else, you know, sovereignty and all that. They all about one world government. And so they all work together, you know, the Five Eyes, the Chinese and the Russians, all of them together. They're monitoring everything. And they share this stuff. They say they don't. Oh, we're, you know, but that's all, again, misdirection. They don't want people to think that they are working together. To create these systems that monitor everything. And, you know, the NSA here in the U.S. and the CIA, I'm sorry, folks, they are all monitoring everything we do. I mean, we really don't have any privacy. We think, you know, we like to still think that we do, but we don't. These smartphones, they can listen in on everything you do, look at everything you're doing. They can watch you if they want to. They can listen to you. And you can pull the battery out of it, and they can still listen to you because they've got batteries. You see how small this tip is right here, how big around it is? They got little batteries that big that are on the circuit board, you know, or hidden on the circuit board, and they're made to look like any other component, you know, capacitor, little capacitor or whatever. So people don't, you know, wouldn't pay them any mind, and they got a little special chip in there that they can communicate to, and you won't ever know it. The phone won't make any kind of you know, won't nothing happen on the phone to make you think that something is messing with it. And they can be listening in, but they, you know, typically they're not sitting there 24/7, which today with AI they could be. But before, the AI got to the point where it is now, no, what they did was they just had a directory with keywords. And if you use one of these keywords, then it would start recording it. And then at some point in time, some human would start listening to it and see what you was talking about, and if it was something that was serious, then they might put a continuous monitor on you. But if it turned out, you wasn't talking about committing a terrorist act, you were talking about somebody who did commit a terrorist act, something you saw on the news or whatever, well, then they'd say, you're just talking about the news or whatever, it's nothing, But if you're sitting there scheming on how to commit a terrorist act, then, it may sit there and listen and try to, they may sit there and listen to it and try to, thwart you from doing it, or they might just try to let you go ahead and do it. If it, create a false flag or something. But that's the thing, is that these technologies have progressed to the point where it's not just with computers and AI. It is with mind control and stuff. The Germans were working on that. That's where the program called MK Ultra, which was the CIA, and these Nazis. If you look at when the CIA, supposedly the CIA was the forerunner, or the predecessor to the OSS during World War II. The Office of Strategic Services, they were the spies and stuff during World War II. But then it morphed into the CIA. And the CIA is a standalone entity, doesn't have anybody over it. It's an entity unto itself, but it is controlled by the deep state, what we call the deep state, or the shadow government, the elitists, the globalists, the one worlders. They're the ones that are working with them. And, I'm convinced that not everyone you see is what they appear, but that there are these hybrids among us. They've got them to the point where they can kind of, they can blend right in and not really be detectable. And I mean, I think there's some of them though that do look kind of strange and stuff, but you don't really, there's some of them, that they just, I don't know. I've seen pictures of entities and stuff, or back from thousands of years ago, depictions of some of these entities, and these Nephilim or whatever, and they were strange looking, big heads, skinny necks, double rows of teeth, 6 fingers, 6 toes. But there were some that everything, in most ways they were normal, but they just looked odd. They like I said, they had a big head and real skinny neck, bulging eyes and stuff like that. And you see some of these kind of people in these government agencies. I mean, they all kind of, the heads of them and stuff like that. A lot of them, they're just strange looking people. They don't look normal, but they don't look monstrous or grotesque or anything. But they just kind of got a strange look to them. These are probably plants. I mean, they're probably hybrid plants that they have been systematically over time placing into positions of power, and that they're the ones really controlling everything. This shadow government, behind the scenes. And they're implementing these programs, like the weather modification and stuff. I talked about that in last week's video. I've talked about it before in other ones. that it's real. They're really doing this stuff. They're really steering these things, and you know, like these couple that's hit down there in Florida, I guarantee you, because somebody's, you know, doesn't like the program down there that Ron DeSantis has been implementing, you know, against the woke left and against a lot of these woke agendas, you know, the transgender and the CRT and several other things, you know, coming against, you know, like Disney and, you know, standing against them. Well, they, you know, they steer one of these things around, down around, and I mean, you can see this thing's going straight through there. You know, it's avoiding everything, going right around there, and it comes around just like this and sits there for 4 days, building up strength, and then comes in. Well, I can imagine them coming behind, you know, somebody calling up Ron DeSantis or meeting him somewhere and saying, "Hey, man, how'd you like that hurricane down there? You want another one? Well, you better start falling in line with what we want, or else we're going to bombard you again and again." Well, he might say, "Well, you know what, man, you know, show me. I don't believe you can do it." And then here, a month later, bam, here's another one. And then here you see another one coming. I mean, you know, Lyndon Johnson in 1969 made a boast about owning the weather by 2025. And whoever owns the weather, controls the world. The weaponization of the weather. Using it. And the thing is you can, you know, plausible denial. Oh, that's an act of God. Nobody can do that. And most people, you know, say, "Yeah, man, ain't nobody can do that to the weather." Sure you can, man, if you know how. I mean, weather is I mean, it's something that is tangible, something that you can monitor, something you can track, something that you can see the mechanisms of how it works. And then you duplicate those mechanisms. Yeah, I mean, it's not something that, you know, 100 years ago we could do. But with, you know, the fact that the Army's Weather Bureau has been working on this since 1935, and even earlier people were doing it. Seeding clouds and all that stuff with silver iodine. So it's, you know, it's not impossible. And then with the energy, ability to manipulate and control energy, HAARP systems, Doppler radar, atmospheric heaters, directed energy weapons, you know, big lasers. I'm not talking about, you know, these ones they show you that the military is supposedly developing, you know, these 100,000 watt lasers. No, I'm talking about half a quadrillion watt lasers that are capable of boiling the ocean. Where, you know, and all you have to do is you know, when the conditions are right and the winds are, and you could even create the wind. Normally hurricanes start when these certain types of winds come off of Africa and they come out into the Atlantic and they start moving across the Atlantic, and the water gets warmer and warmer out there in the Atlantic. These things begin to get strengthened. And they begin, you know, and then when you have these jet streams coming in the right orientation, and they dip down, and they come across that wind that's moving like this here, and they dip down, they begin to start, it causes it to start spinning around. And, you know, with the warmer water, they get stronger and stronger. And I mean, because as they're moving across, that water out there gets warmer and warmer and warmer. Especially down in the southern latitudes, then it builds up strength. And so if you could take one of these directed energy weapons and beam it up there and back down into the ocean ahead of this thing, and heat the water up ahead of it and kind of draw it, you know, have it moving, heating the water, moving along like this right here. I mean, it could just draw that tornado or that hurricane right along behind it. And then once you get over close to the United States, you got all these Doppler radar systems. And of course, radar is sending out a signal, sending out a wave, and it's going out and it's hitting an object and it bounces back. But what if you take and you increase the power on these radars and you shoot it out there and you do it with enough of them and they go out there and they begin to steer, or bump that, the energy is like a hand pushing up against that hurricane and pushes it further south and then steers it along as it's coming around into the Gulf of Mexico, and then the other ones start hitting it from this side and start pushing it to where it comes around like this, back up. I mean, it's not far-fetched. I mean, you just have to see it in your mind. And, I've seen footage, from satellites that show these Doppler radar, systems, which they're these big white domes up on a tower, and they'll usually have, the local I don't know what's going on with my camera here. Now oh, okay, I see now. But anyway, they'll have these towers. I mean, you can see the energy because you can look with the right type of sensors. You can see these things pulsing. Pulsing. They show up as a certain color to these sensors, like blue, and you can see these things all over the United States pulsing all at the same time. I mean, they're pulsing, and they're steering these things. And then they use these atmospheric heaters or these HARP systems to beam energy up, down, and to heat up the water, or these directed energy weapons to heat the water up there to strengthen these things. And also to move the jet stream around. If if the jet stream is going to be a problem with you steering this thing, all you got to do is create the right conditions to put a bend into the jet stream, make it dip down, make it dip down like that right there. Say your hurricane's coming across here and your jet stream's coming like this, just make it dip down and go around. I mean, and they can do that. Of course, a lot of people, don't think it's true, but they can. And there's a multitude of papers, scientific papers that have been written and submitted to journals and all describing this stuff, how they can do it. Cloud seeding, stratospheric aerosol injection, which is these chemtrails, planes flying back and forth. I mean, this is all well documented. You can go look this stuff up. You can find it. You just have to use the right nomenclature, the right wordage whenever you're looking for it. Because if you use the wrong thing, they're going to take you somewhere else. They're not going to take you. They're going to say conspiracy theory or whatever, but nothing conspiracy theory about it. It's a fact that they're doing this. And so that's just one aspect of knowledge and technology that these Germans brought over here. The rocketry and all that stuff. But MK Ultra, mind control. They brought that over here too. And of course they used all kinds of drugs and stuff like LSD and Ativan and stuff like that, these psychotic drugs. But they also used energy. They used the microwaves and different things like they've tried all. I mean, just the what was it up there, that island up there off Montauk Island or whatever up there off the coast of New York, that they had insane asylum out there. Well, the CIA used that place for the experiments in this stuff. And they had people like Uri Geller out there, the guy that's supposed to be able to bend spoons and stuff with his thoughts. Now, I don't know about if he could do that or not, but I know that they were trying everything. And they done a lot of terrible things to people, and then you had the guy up there at McGill, that psychiatrist up there that developed a lot of these techniques too for brainwashing, getting erasing your identity and then replacing it with a new identity. And he was working in all that MK Ultra stuff with the CIA, and now they, and I've seen the documentaries about this stuff, and they actually, you could watch them doing this. They were, filming it, and I think it was at like Carnegie Mellon University and out at Stanford, where they had these neuroscience programs, and they also had computer centers, computer science research centers, some of them, most advanced. And what they were doing is they had developed these sensor arrays that were in like a skull cap that they pulled on, and they hooked it up to it was like 100 sensors, and they ran them to oscilloscopes or to a computer or whatever that would display your brainwave activity. And they've done experiments where they would take, and for example, they were using like graduate students as their test subjects. They would put this thing on their head, and they would show them an object like this pen here, and they'd say, all right, this is an ink pen. I want you to just think about this ink pen. And you think about it, and while you're thinking about it, they're watching the scan of your brain waves through these sensors that they're, and they're monitoring them. And, you have alpha, beta, and theta waves, but the wave type is determined on whether you're awake, whether you're asleep, or whether you're in a deep sleep. You got alpha, beta, and theta. And I think when you're awake, you have these theta waves or whatever, or maybe it's I think it's anyway, they like 8 hertz, 10 hertz, and 14 hertz. So they're low frequency, very low frequency. Well, if when I'm looking at this ink pen, I'm thinking about ink pen, I've got a certain kind of wave, but it's a bunch of waves. I mean, it's, they're looking through 100 sensors here, so they're seeing all these waves. And now I'd say they probably got them where they can look at thousands of them, simultaneously. And they're seeing these waves, and so I'm one of 40 test subjects. And every test subject comes in there, and I show them this ink pen. And they're thinking about this ink pen, and I'm watching these waves, and I notice a pattern that everybody is got this same pattern whenever they see this ink pen. Then I show them a baseball, and they got this pattern. So now I can start amassing a list, a directory or a database of waves, and with each wave I can have a little picture over here or word to associate with it. This wave right here means ink pen. This wave means baseball. This wave means automobile. And, you just keep doing this over years and accumulating, this stuff in a database. Well, then you don't have to do it. You can program AI to pulse this stuff out. You build a pulse generator that sends out 14 hertz theta waves or whatever. And when you pulse it out, you're seeing ink pen. And when it comes into somebody's head, they're over thinking about an ink pen. Or a baseball. You could send out the waves that are equivalent to baseball. And in their mind, they're going to be thinking about a baseball. Or an automobile. Or a bowl of cereal. Or an apple. I mean, whatever. Or you could take and using a lot of different techniques, like I say, using these brainwashing techniques where they basically clear out your identity and put another identity in you, sort of a Manchurian candidate where they just take and put a trigger word in you, and whenever the time comes, they send a wave out and it triggers you to do whatever they want, programmed you to do, whether it's to assassinate somebody or rob a bank or, whatever. And the whole time, you don't know nothing about it. You're oblivious to it. You're going along, you're Joe Schmo, and you're going to work every day, you got a family, you're doing all this, and then one day, boom, they want you to do your task, and they just blink, send a signal out, and it turns something on that I must go do this, and you go do it. Just like some of these mass shootings and stuff. I mean, but the idea that this is not something that is possible is just, in my opinion, just ignorance on people's part, that to think that this is, the things that Satan and his minions, they do it. They put thoughts in people's heads. They put temptation in your head. And the Father, our Creator, can also put thoughts in our mind. And they use what's known as the third eye, or the pineal gland. It's a transceiver. And that's what they'd be targeting. They'd be targeting that. And these people, you got all these people now that are having, schizophrenia, so-called schizophrenia, hearing voices and stuff. They could be under attack. Or they could be experimenting on them. Seeing if they can drive them crazy. Because these people, they are, they have no qualms whatsoever about tormenting, killing, torturing, you name it. They have no problem doing it. It doesn't bother them one bit. They don't have a conscience. And so they don't mind going out here and doing this stuff to people if it fulfills their agenda, which is Satan's agenda. Because they're doing what their father, Satan, is compelling them to do. And so they are working hand in hand to develop these technologies that give them this kind of power, and ultimately will give the power over to Satan, so that he will be doing this. And he'll just tell, when it gets down to that point where he's in control, he'll just tell this AI, go after all these Christians, the ones that are, calling him out, that are telling people to repent, during the tribulation, and that are resisting their system, that then he's going to declare war on them. And of course, they don't, I've said this before, people who, well, man, they come after me, I'll get my gun, and no, you won't. Oh, you might break a gun out or something, but what are you going to be fighting against? You're going to be fighting against, this guy, this Cirillo guy that was up at Georgetown up there, and he was telling these people the capabilities that the CIA and our government and other governments, the capabilities that they have. That they can take insects. And I talked about that in my last video. These scarab beetles, and I've talked about it before, how they had these little chip packs on their back and these probes going into their head, and they were flying them. I mean, they were using one of these radio controllers, and they was flying them, making them go left, making them go right, making them go straight, making them land. And that was from back in the 70s. And he said that they were way beyond all that. That they could plant nanotechnology inside of them. They could even impregnate them with microorganisms and mixing their DNA and stuff, and to where they could release this organism from them whenever they wanted to. It would be dormant. It would be dormant in the insect, and then whenever they want, they could fly this insect or just program it where they wanted it to go. And whenever they got where they was going at, this bug could come over there and bite you and inject these nanobots or whatever into you, or this microorganism into you. And then once that microorganism is released in your body, they could use the 5G to turn it on and make it, start doing whatever it's programmed to do, whether it's to cause you to get, cancer or some kind of other disease or neurological issues. I mean, on and on and on. But the main thing is that they can use this technology to attack your mind. They can use it to attack your mind, to put thoughts in your mind. And whenever it talks about in scriptures about wearing down the saints, that's what the word wearing down means. It means mentally. To just beat you down mentally until you just give up. That's what wearying the saints is all about. Is that it's going to be against our minds. And, a lot of believers or people that claim to be believers are lazy. They don't want to do their studying. They don't want to pray. They don't want to, fast. They don't want to do their research and homework. They want somebody else to do it for them. Somebody like me do the research and come out here and tell you and show you and, show you in the scriptures and all that. Instead of doing it yourself. That's why I always say, be a good Berean. You don't believe what I tell you. Don't, receive what I got to say with openness of mind, but you don't believe what I tell you. Do your own homework. Do your own research. Because I could be a deceiver. You don't know. You don't know me from Adam. But I hope that my spirit bears witness to yours. That I am trying to bring truth to you and understanding that the times that we're living in, we're fighting a spiritual battle against powers and principalities and spiritual wickedness in high places. But that's not all that we're fighting against. Now we're going to be fighting against machines, AI, and technology that can, and they're already doing it. And I know, I can tell I can tell a lot of times when they're doing this stuff with these atmospheric heaters and with this 5G stuff. These nights that, that my breathing, I can be laying there in the bed, man, and I mean, I have to get up. I have to get up because I can't breathe. And I was fine. And it just seems like, and I can tell like there's something, it ain't like burning me or nothing like that. Like, cooking me inside or something. It's like it's something that is affecting my electrical system that's controlling my breathing. And also during the day, you go out and it says that it's 82 degrees, but it feels like it's 100. You can feel your skin burning. Well, that's these atmospheric heaters. They're shooting up billions of watts of energy up there and bouncing it back down at these targets, these big X's they put up there. I've seen these. I've even seen them, thinking they're being slick, I guess, but making pentagrams. And that ain't something that just, that takes some skill. That takes some effort to actually make one of these 5-pointed pentagrams. But these planes did it. And, they putting it in our face. And that's the thing that is, that's what's, they don't care. They putting it in our face. And yet, so many people have been so indoctrinated and so programmed not to be, able to see this stuff. They're blind. They're spiritually blind. They're spiritually deaf, and they don't have a heart of understanding. These things must be discerned spiritually. And so these people are lost. And and they claim, a lot of them claim they just church, they got churchism. They go and sit on a pew on Sunday and Wednesday night, and they think they're Christians. But they no. Because if they were truly born again, and they really believe what the scriptures say, then they would see this stuff for what it really is. And they would begin to understand what Yeshua was talking about in Matthew 24 and other places where he talks about Noah and Lot and them. If the people had known, and they did. But they didn't believe it. Just like now, me telling people this stuff here, there's a lot of people, just most of them ain't going to believe it. Because it just doesn't fit their paradigm. To accept, just like the flat earth, to accept that, man, it so disrupts their current paradigm that they just can't handle it. And you can explain to them the purpose for it. Why? Because they say, well, why would anybody do that? What's the point? The point is to deceive people. The point is to deceive you with a great deception. You take one deception and and deceive people with another deception. Because if you begin to fall for a deception, and they build on it over time, you're going to fall for an even greater deception. And the greater deception is that when these entities show up, they're aliens. But you can't have aliens if you ain't got no outer space and no, ever expanding universe. You just can't. And so, I want you to be aware of this stuff. And the only way that you're going to be able to stand against it, because like I said, it's not just going to be the spiritual aspect coming against you, but it's going to be this technology coming against you and coming against your mind. And you have to pray for protection. You have to stay in the Word diligently. And you have to be aware that they can do this stuff. Because when they do it, you're not going to understand. If you don't understand what's going on, you're not going to know how to fight against it. Targeted prayer. Because if you got targeted prayer against targeted assault, and all that, put on the whole armor of Elohim. And so I just want to, kind of, this is like I say, it's sort of an addendum to last week, or last week's video that was pulled down. Because you're not allowed to talk about certain things on YouTube, or else, it don't fit the narrative. If it don't fit the narrative, this here, this stuff is out there. So it's not like I'm telling you something that's, secret. Again, they're to the point now where they don't really care whether we know or not, because there's not anything that we're going to be able to do about it. That's why I say these people that say, well, man, we'll break our guns out. Sure you will. And you won't ever see what hit you. Once they really determine to come after people, they'll send a swarm of these drones that ain't no bigger than your pinky, like that. And they'll be attacking your mind. They'll be, beaming this stuff out. And they're putting these things everywhere. And in the cities, they got these little boxes about like this here. They got them about every 150, 200 yards, if that. So, they're putting them everywhere. And because it's millimeter wave microwaves, they're real small waves. So they don't have much transmission distance. But they have the ability, because of their small size, to be able to be used to manipulate living organisms, turn things on and off. The switches that turn on, viruses and other organisms, or turn off things, or attack things, affect stuff. Like where these microorganisms, or these nanobots, and these things like graphene, that are highly affected by energy. I saw where this guy, I think he was a Russian dude, but he had some of that graphene, and he took his telephone and he, started calling it and put it near where that graphene was, and that stuff started just organizing together and just moving all around. It was creepy. And so, they could put that, they talk like that stuff's in these chemtrails and in other things that I wouldn't want to put in my body. And so, resistance is imperative. Don't let these people do things to you that are going to change you or alter you or affect you in a way that will diminish your genetics from the one that the genetics that you were created with. Because I believe that's part of the agenda too, is to change you, to change me, to change everybody into something other than human. And so, I guess just don't let yourself be caught unaware about the level of technology that they have, and the fact that they will use it. They are using it. They're using it to manipulate people, to control people, and they will ultimately be using it to control everybody if they can. And with AI, they can do it. And of course, if you take this stuff and you let them take control of your mind and you begin to worship Satan, there's no hope for you. You're done. And the only way that you're going to be able to resist it is to have his word here in your mind, to be filled with the Ruach HaKodesh, and to stay as close to the Messiah as you can get. Prayer and reading his word and keeping it. And praying for divine protection, because he can protect you from it. But you got to sincerely pray and be repented. I've talked about it. You got to be repented up, or else he ain't going to hear you. So, mainly I just kind of wanted to put that out there about that, that stuff is happening, that they do have this technology. They do have a lot more stuff than people realize. And they're implementing it. That's why they do all the stuff that they do, is to misdirect us and to make us look away from what they're doing. And you go out there and look, and then one day you over here paying attention to all this stuff over here, and the whole time they're putting these towers up everywhere. And they don't care one bit about this phone having, higher speeds. I mean, that's not the idea. The idea is to slip all this 5G stuff, and now they're even talking about 10G. Terahertz stuff. And it's so that they can have instantaneous contact and tracking and control through these smartphones. So, sorry folks. So that's where we're at. And it's accelerating. And so, all I can tell you is resist. Don't let them take your mind, and don't let them put stuff in you that wasn't in you to begin with. And with that, I love you folks. I appreciate you folks watching my videos. I hope that you get something from it. That that we all learn, and that we follow our Messiah. Follow him. Take up your cross and follow him. And believe in the Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. There's only one. There's only one Creator. There's only one Messiah. Only one Ruach. And you got to trust and believe and repent. If you ain't repented, truly repented. Repent, be baptized, and receive the Ruach HaKodesh. And let him lead you and guide you to truth. and pray for discernment, pray for mental protection from these things that are coming. It's already here. And with that, I love you folks, and I'll see you on Shabbat the next time, if Yahuwah is willing. And hopefully these demons at YouTube won't pull this video down. But you never know. I mean, they'll use any excuse. But at least I figure if they, messing with me or pulling me down, they're letting somebody else have a break. And it's the AI that did it. I mean, there's no people involved in it. It just hears certain words or certain phrases, pull you down. But it's I look at that as the technology of Satan. And so with that, I hope you people have a blessed week. I love you. Take care.